hopefully help you all, break down some of a fishery that maybe you're wanting to go to, or a fishery that might be similar to somewhere that you have, and for the time of the year that we will be going there. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and back, I guess, a little bit by popular demand anyway, is the BPT map study, something that we did last year. That was the first year that we had done this, and I enjoyed doing this, and hopefully help you all, break down some of a fishery that maybe you're wanting to go to, or a fishery that might be similar to somewhere that you have, and for the time of the year that we will be going there. So yeah, this was something that was new for us last year, and we're going to do this again this season, and hopefully make a really good series out of it. I'm going to pull up here and see just what the dates of stage one. Okay, our stage one, got it all on my calendar here on my phone. Stage one is looks like our practice will start like January 27th. And then the championship day going into the beginning of February at February 2nd. So basically the last week of January, first couple of days of February is when we're going to be down at, again, BPT Stage 1 on Lake Conroe, a little bit north of Houston, Texas. Just a little bit of my history with Lake Conroe. The first time I fished here was in a Toyota Texas Bass Classic. That would have been in like 2011, I think, was the first time that I fished there. And the lake was actually really low then, like 7 or 8 feet low. They'd had a bad drought back then in Texas in that 2009, 10, 11 time frame, and the lake had been low for quite some time. And I did good in that event. I think I finished 4th in it, and I fished there another TTBC or two, and I also fished a Bassmaster Classic there that Jordan Lee won. 2 years before I won mine. He won that, and he won 17 and 18. This was the 17 Classic, and I finished in the top five. Top five, I believe. I think I was 4th in that as well, 4th or 5th in that Classic, which was in March. And then our first year of BPT, our second event was on Lake Conroe at a pretty similar time of the year when we were there in that particular event. One thing that is still unsure of, we're filming this in early December. I don't know with Conroe what the minimum size is going to be, and that's not really going to change how I our breakdown on it. But again, just a little bit of the history of what I've done there. In those in the catchway release tournaments, the TTBC that we fished there, we fished a 14-inch size limit. And the Classic, it was a 16-inch size limit when we fished there in BPT the first time under catchway release. With every fish counts, it was a 1 pound minimum. So I have fished Lake Conroe with a lot of different size restrictions. So I don't know what this one is, honestly, as of filming this. I kind of assume it's going to be a 1/8 minimum. But in that Classic with a 16-inch size limit, I'm 99% sure that I was the only guy that caught a limit every day in that particular event. So Conroe is known for big fish. Final day I had a 9.9 in that particular one. It's known for big fish, but honestly not a lot of just good size fish. Not a lot of 2, 3, 4 pounders. You may catch an 8, and you may not catch anything else over 1.5 pounds the rest of the day. So just kind of a unique fishery a little bit in that. All right, so really getting into Lake Conroe itself. So what you've got, kind of middle part of the lake, there's a major bridge that crosses there, really kind of midpoint of the lake. It's not showing here on my Humminbird what highway that is, but yeah, right in the middle part of the lake is a bridge that crosses, and really below that, so from the dam up to that bridge is almost no timber. Back a few of the creeks and stuff have a little bit of standing timber in them, but truly no timber to deal with in that lower section of the lake. You get north of that bridge, and then there is quite a bit of timber. This big creek arm off to the left has a lot of timber. The main lake going up the lake has a lot of timber. And then there's another bridge up there on up the lake a good little bit. Right here is where it is. It says that it's called Baker Bridge, is what it has named on here. And it really, once you get above that next bridge, it is really, really shallow pretty much. And again, lots of timber. All the way up at the north end, there is a set of canals up there, kind of a residential area, and then you've got the rest of the natural part of it, kind of the natural river and stuff. But Conroe, to me, it really does have two major sections. That below that bridge and north of that bridge. Below that bridge, it is basically all developed. There is very, very little natural, what I would call natural bank left down there. It's either riprap or it's seawalls. There's not a lot else. There's not a lot of just sloping banks into the water anywhere. Um, it's pretty much all developed on that south end of the lake. You get north, and then it's like 10% maybe developed or something at that point. It's way, way less developed, a lot more natural, natural type of stuff up that way. So it kind of depends. You can kind of look at it and be like, man, I don't want to fish around any of that developed stuff. I'm going to fish, the north end of the lake. Or, hey, I don't mind it, so I'm going to fish down there. The unique thing with that, and kind of what makes this I look back at the first BPT that we fished there. I fished the north end of the lake. That's where I have fished in the classics. That's where I've fished in the TTBCs. And most of the time, that's where a lot of stuff gets won. There really is more spawning habitat on the north end of the lake. And, if you've got more habitat, that just generally equates to a bigger population of bass. It's really, it's kind of not rocket science. If you've got more shallow cover places, even just honestly just shallow water, because that's the deal on the south end of the lake. So much of that being surrounded by seawalls, a lot of that stuff right against that seawall is 2, 3, 4 feet deep. And Conroe isn't a really clear lake. Sometimes in the main lake it may get 3 or 4 feet of visibility, but those fish, I feel like they want to try to get pretty shallow to spawn. 1, 2 feet, and there just truly isn't a lot of that really, really shallow water on that south end of the lake. So I do think that that's why, the numbers of fish on the south end maybe not be real good, although there's big ones down there. Numbers of fish generally are better on that north end of the lake. Again, that being said, that's where I have done well in some events in the past. And that BPT last time when we were here, it was actually a little bit later. It was like a couple weeks into February, kind of mid-February, where we're going to end at the very beginning. So, and being a little bit earlier, those fish will still be a little bit more pre-spawn than they were in that particular event. Possibly, it really depends on the weather. If they've had a mild winter, and already had a little bit of warm stuff, there could be fish spawning when we're at Conroe. At the end of January, early February like this. So it really just depends on the weather. It could be a wintertime bite still. It could be a very early pre-spawn bite. That classic that we fished there, which was middle of March, towards the end of March, there were fish spawning in that one. So there was a shad spawn going on and there were bass still spawning. So that just kind of shows you, to me, it starts down here probably early February and runs through, most of March or so is when a lot of those fish spawn on Conroe. But again, a big player that I personally overlooked last time when we were here was that south end of the lake and the backs of those, backs of those major creek arms. There were some of those that had big groups of anglers in them and had big groups of fish in them. And, they'd go back in there into those little places where sometimes it's canals that were dug out. Some of it might have a little bit of natural stuff to it, but getting way back in the back end of those places where it was protected, where those fish are going to be spawning really soon, is where a lot of guys did well in that particular event. So stuff like this where you go back in and there's a bridge and that water back behind that is very protected. It's going to warm up a lot quicker than the stuff that's out in front of it that's a little bit deeper. It's those kind of deals where, man, you're probably going to end up fishing around a lot of people, but at the same point in time, you're going to be around the fish. So it's one of those kind of deals you just have to mentally overcome it a little bit and just get in there and really buckle down and fish hard. And for me, that, again, I overlooked it. The amount of, practice time that we had that I spent, pretty much all of it up on the north end. I was all in on that before I got there. And truly one of those ones where history burnt me. I mean, let's just call it what it is. I went there being like, nope, numbers of fish, and it being a 1 pound minimum. I'm going to go up here on the north end on this area here. Um, they have a name for it locally. I want to say it's like the hatchery. No, the jungle. I think it's the jungle is what they call it. This is up just below that second bridge going up the lake. A lot of little islands and stuff. A lot of shallow flats, real shallow stumps, and all that kind of stuff in there. It's got a couple, bigger ditches that drain out of it and things. And that area historically always has a lot of bass in it. I fished in there some in that classic. Steve Kennedy fished in there a lot. Very, very good area for spawning fish. And I really thought, man, I can just go in there, figure out where these fish are at, and I'll be able to catch them. But that did not work out for me. So again, Conroe is a cool place, a diverse place. Somewhere that you can, I think, a little bit pick your poison. But if one part of it is truly what's going on, like that's going to be the place to be. If it is this north end, the south end is not going to compete with it. If it's going on the south end, the north end is not going to compete with it. It's not one that that I think that is the whole lake has the potential. Let me say it that way. The whole lake has the potential, but whichever one is on, that's the one you've got to be in. Because if you're on, if the south end is really on and the north end is really off, like you're not going to be able to compete. Everybody, it's going to be one of those kind of deals where 8 of the top 10 are probably in some of the same areas or very, very similar areas doing very, very similar things. We'll go through some baits, I think, a little bit first, and then or before we close out. But bait-wise for here should be a pretty simple deal. I mean, it should be a bladed jig is going to be a big player. Lipless crankbait could be a player. Shallow crankbaits are going to be a player. Those three, will certainly be major things. I think a jerkbait, will be a player, and this will be the first event for us seeing how the one period with forward facing is going to play out. So I think that's going to be a unique deal, and based on what the weather would be, I would think most guys would pick their first period to have forward facing, just guessing, because most likely that's going to be the toughest period, and probably when forward facing would be the most productive. Once you get up into the day and hopefully it starts warming up a little bit, fish should be more active and you should be able to catch them doing different things. But I would assume first period is when a lot of guys would choose to have their forward facing, and of course a jerk bait, jig head minnow, and that type of stuff on some brush and those type of things are certainly what's going to be a player. But cool event to start the year. We'll definitely be interested to see what the minimum weight is going to be on this one, and then as well as just how it all ends up playing out. But we're ready to get to Lake Conroe, that's for sure.